You want to add quick and realistic vegetation to your dioramas. Today, I'll show you how to create easy yet ultra-realistic bushes and trees in no time. Simple materials, fast techniques, and pro results. Let's get started. Welcome to the MangaCraft YouTube channel. Today I'm back with a new tutorial. For this tutorial you'll need a piece of rope, some glue, and a few different colors of flocking. Using just these simple materials, we're going to create fast and realistic bushes that will bring your dioramas to life. Take a piece of rope that matches the scale of your diorama. I cut mine to about 4 to 5 centimeters long. Next, I fray 2/3 of the rope, leaving the last third intact and tightly wound. The rope consists of 3 strands. For denser vegetation, you can glue multiple pieces together, mixing different sizes to create a more natural look, just like real vegetation. Once the fibers are separated, I apply a layer of glue to stiffen and reinforce them. While the base dries, I prepare tiny twigs using another piece of rope. I cut them into small sections, about 0.1 to 0.3 centimeters long. In a spray bottle, I mix glue with water and lightly spray the base. This helps the twigs adhere properly. Finally, I sprinkle the tiny twigs over the base, repeating the process as needed to achieve the desired density. I gently tap the surface to remove any excess twigs. Here are some examples of bushes with different shapes and densities. Next, I apply a layer of brown acrylic paint to give the branches a natural tone. You can adjust the shade of brown depending on whether your project will be in a light or dark setting. Now, the final step before completing your professional bushes, the flocking. I recommend using 2 or 3 different shades of flocking, a dark, a medium, and a light tone. This will add depth and create a realistic lighting effect in your vegetation. Since my project is set in spring, I'm using green tones. But if you're creating an autumn scene, you could go with shades of brown, red, orange, or yellow. The process remains the same. I start by spraying glue onto the base, getting it ready for flocking. The first layer is the darkest tone, which I apply across the entire surface. Since the next layers will build on top of this one, I make sure to cover a wide area so that this base layer remains visible underneath. One important detail, I intentionally leave the lower branches with little to no flocking. Just like real bushes, the dense foliage grows mostly at the top and outer sections, while the base remains sparser, revealing more of the branches. Then I carefully sprinkle the medium tone, keeping in mind that this layer adds brightness to the bush. I spray the glue precisely, making sure to avoid areas that are completely in the shade. I try to create a smooth gradient between the fully lit and fully shaded areas. Staying consistent with the light and shadow placement is key to achieving a realistic and visually striking result. I follow the same approach for the lightest tone, but this time, I focus only on the very tips of the branches. To ensure precision, I use a brush to apply glue exactly where needed. This gives me much better control compared to spraying, allowing me to highlight just the right spots for a natural, well-balanced effect. For the final touch, I gently tap the bush into a colored flocking to create the effect of tiny flowers blooming at the tips. This small detail brings even more life and realism to the vegetation. And there you have it. Let's quickly recap the key steps. Cut a rope, fray 2/3, and keep the last third intact. Sprinkle tiny twigs over the base, then apply 3 layers of flocking, from the darkest to the lightest tone. Finally, add colored flocking for a natural flower effect. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel and keeps the creative content coming. Let me know in the comments what kind of scenery you'd like to see next. Without wasting any time, let's jump into creating our trees. For this, I'll need thyme branches, rope, glue, aluminum foil, clay, acrylic paint, and a few different colors of flocking. And what better base for a miniature tree than something straight from nature itself? Thyme branches are a fantastic choice. They already have that organic, gnarled look, making them perfect for tiny trees. But their shape isn't always ideal, so let's fix that. First, I carefully trim away any unwanted branches and reposition them using glue to achieve a more natural, balanced silhouette. In nature, trees don't grow in a perfect pattern. Branches spread out unevenly, reaching toward the light while adapting to the elements. To replicate this, I make sure to vary branch angles and spacing, avoiding symmetry to keep things looking realistic. A tree's structure should feel organic, with a strong central trunk supporting an irregular but harmonious spread of branches. Now I prepare small pieces of aluminum foil to widen and reproportion the trunk, making sure it has a natural taper from a thick base to thinner sections at the top. I shape and press the foil around the branch, building up volume where needed to create a sturdy, well-balanced structure. I aim to create a smooth transition between the trunk and the branches. A bit of hot glue helps secure everything in place while adding subtle texture to the surface. Now the trunk shape is perfect, let's create the bark. For that, I'll use polymer clay. I apply a thin layer all around the trunk, using a little water to smooth it out and ensure full coverage. This clay coverage step allows me to refine the trunk with precision and shape it exactly as I want. While the clay is still wet, it remains highly flexible and easy to manipulate, making this the perfect stage to add intricate details. With a toothpick, I carve out small grooves and indentations, mimicking the rugged texture of real tree bark. Varying the size and depth of these details adds to the realism. To enhance the realism even further, I pay attention to natural imperfections, subtle cracks, knots, and irregularities that occur in real tree bark. These tiny details add authenticity and make the tree feel more lifelike. I let everything dry for about 12 to 24 hours before moving on to the next step, making sure the clay sets properly and hardens. Once dry, I go back with a precision cutting tool to add even finer details, giving the trunk even more depth. Before we move on to painting, I make sure to clean up any excess material, getting it ready for the next step. This ensures a smooth surface and helps the paint adhere better. Then I apply a base coat of white before carefully mixing a color that matches the original thyme branches. I apply a soft brown as a base color, then mix in darker tones directly onto the trunk to add depth and dimension. To finish, I add a highly diluted brown wash. This final layer seeps into the grooves, darkening the recesses, adding depth, and giving the trees an aged, natural look. Alright, to achieve that ultra-realistic tree look, we'll follow the same process as with the bushes. First, sprinkle twings on the glued base. Then, I select 3 shades of green flocking, dark, medium, and light, to create depth. After lightly spraying the tree with a glue water mix, I layer the flocking, starting with the darkest tone at the base, then the medium tone for a smooth transition, and finish with the lightest green at the tips. By alternating these layers and applying them strategically, I create a more dynamic, organic look, making the tree feel alive. Now that the tree is complete, let's quickly recap what we've done. First, find thyme branches and reshape them to form the tree's structure. Then create a realistic trunk using clay for the bark, and add acrylic paint for a natural look. Finally, apply 3 layers of flocking, from darkest to lightest, to finish the tree. That's it for today's video. I hope you found these techniques useful for your own dioramas. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, comment below, and subscribe for more tips and tutorials. See you in the next one.